Good afternoon. Welcome to this WAN-IFRA webinar taking place here in amazingly sunny Frankfurt. Good morning and good evening, depending where you are. And looking at our global audience from the registrations, it is indeed a very global audience, and looks like we have already registered about 160 people. So it shows the interest in the topic of digital subscriptions that is not just taking place here in Europe, but definitely all over the world. So today, our featured speaker is Sidney Glastad from Aftenposten. My name is Dean Roper. I'm the Director of Insights at WAN-IFRA, and I will be guiding us through this webinar. Just before we get started, I wanted to mention a couple of webinars we have coming up. One we've been trying to get done for the last month, but it looks like we will hopefully get that in the pipeline within the next 2 to 3 weeks. That is Ad Trust in News Media, based on the report that we did last year. So that should take place hopefully within the next 3 weeks. And also around digital subscriptions, we are working on a report that we hope to finalize in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That is all about the technology and data that goes into the making digital subscriptions work. And we will also have a webinar focused on that report or some aspect of that report. But stay tuned to that web address below to get the latest updates on webinars coming up. Also, we have a number of events coming up, but along this topic, Digital Media Europe 2020 will take place in beautiful Vienna on March 31st and April 1st. And the event will feature a 2-day deep dive about subscription marketing, but also in parallel, a 1-day focus on premium advertising. So check out that URL below and see what's going on there, and we hope to see you in Vienna. There's also another digital media event coming up, and that's Digital Media India as well, I believe in February. Also, we have two reports, the one I mentioned earlier, but we produced a report last year on about retention lessons for digital subscriptions. That report is available to WAN-IFRA members. If you see that it can address the URL below, go there. You can download it for free if you're a WAN-IFRA member. If you're not, you can purchase the report. And the other report is, we have actually a case study that's available on the site from the upcoming report. It's a case study about the data, state of data at Politiken in Denmark. So you can get a sort of a sneak preview of what is coming in that report as well. So Sidney joined Schibsted in 2017, right at the, I would say about a year after Aftenposten started a very radical change in its newsroom. Much of that focused on the organization of the newsroom, everything from new job roles to incorporating data, but with a clear focus on its audience and getting its audience to pay. And Sidney's been at the heart of some of that change, not just in the newsroom, but working across departments in trying to optimize not just the marketing, but all sorts of strategies to acquire subscriptions. And he brought with him a number of years of digital experience while working at Karat, as well as Microsoft and other companies. So Sidney today, of course, we'll talk about Aftenposten's digital subscription strategy, starting with sort of the landscape of what Aftenposten's doing, what they've been doing, what type of model they have. And of course, he will talk a little bit about what they've been doing quite well, where they've had success, and he will also share a bit about what they plan to do, what they think will work this year and perhaps beyond. So before I hand over to Sidney, I just wanted to point out that on your actually on your panel there to the right, you can write questions for Sidney, and we'll try to get to those. And Sidney will talk for about 20 to 30 minutes, and after he talks, we'll try to get to those questions and see what he can address. One thing is, Sidney, if you have questions specifically about newsroom organization, that's not really his forte. So just so you know. And just to mention quickly before handing over to Sidney, if you have follow-up questions that we can't get to, you can send those questions to this email address, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So, Sidney, I'm about to hand my screen to you.
Thank you, Dean.
Oh, 1 second. There we go.
All right, let's see.
Okay, all yours.
All right, thank you, Dean, and good morning, afternoon, and evening, and whatever applies to where you are right now. My name is Sidney Glastad. I'm the acquisition manager for Aftenposten. Excuse me. So I want to share with you, and first of all, I want to say thank you to WAN-IFRA for inviting me. Aftenposten is an old newspaper now. We were established in 1886, and as we speak, we're the second most trusted news source in Norway after public broadcasting. We're a morning paper, and right now we have about 240,000 paying subscribers, and 119,000 of those are pure digital subscribers. We are 150 people here in Oslo, and correspondents across the world in the US, Russia, Brussels, and the Middle East. So a little bit about our journey. As you can see, we are, sorry, I'm going a bit too fast here. At the moment, we have about 119,000 subscribers. That's the end of 2019. And this curve is something that we are obviously quite proud of. And I'm going to talk you through how that came about and what the factors are for our success. So first of all, two major factors that we have to address is that Norway is a very heavy news reading nation. So traditionally people have subscribed to several newspapers in their households. So people in Norway are really quite used to reading news. And right now today, the largest website today in Norway is a news site. It continuously battles with Facebook for the top spot. And 83% of the Norwegian population read news every day or visit several news sites every day. The other thing is that due to the dropping ad revenues back in 2011-13, there were converging strategies across the market. So a lot of media companies were looking at dropping ad revenues and trying to figure out different ways of addressing that. So that means that the first paywalls actually started to appear back in 2011 in Norway. And by 2013, several newspapers had metered paywalls, albeit quite porous metered paywalls. So you could read something up in about 20 articles or 10 articles a week. And by 2015, most local newspapers and Aftenposten were starting to put up paywalls. And right now, about 70% of readers in Norway hit one or more paywall a week. So there's not a lot of people left who don't understand that paying for news is important. So what we did in the face of those changes was that back in 2015, a strategic decision was made to go all in on user payment and user revenue. A couple of months later, we launched our hybrid model, where we have the meter model, where you could read 8 articles per week. As I said, it was quite porous in the start. And we also had some areas, some content areas that were premium. After a while, we, you can, as you can see, that the sort of curve started to become quite steep at the time, and we did a couple of other things to just continue to grow. One of them, one of the key success factors was actually sponsoring content, like, key pieces of art, key articles on Facebook as ads. And that delivered our content to thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, content that we knew, converted on our site, but our site was just too small to reach out to and the number of people that we needed to make it convert even more. Another thing that we did a couple of months later was that we tightened up the meter. So we changed it from 8 to 6 articles per week, which also gave tremendous results and kept our curve steep and nice. After a while, we also started to increase the share of premium articles on our front page, because we saw that the more content on our front page that was locked, the more sales we had. Then we had a Norwegian election, and we in Norway, and it was quite a success story where we, Aftenposten is the kind of newspaper where people go and figure out why things are happening, trying to understand why things are happening, and what the elements in the story are. So people don't come to us when when there's breaking news. They come to us after, when they need to figure out what actually has happened. So when the Norwegian election had happened, we did some tactics where we loosened up the meter so that a lot of people would hit the meter on the day after the election, when they were coming to us for election information and understanding what happened in the election. So that worked really well for us as well. Fast forward till a couple of months later, in the middle of 2018, we started to realize that we've actually moved into another model. We are now primarily a freemium site, and our meter is smaller. So just to recap, in the bottom there, where the strategic decision went to go all in happened, our meter model was basically our primary sales force. And as following the curve upwards, we saw that sales from meter are becoming less and less relevant, and sales from premium articles are becoming more and more important. At the same time, we've seen a tremendous development, both as a response to what we have been doing in Aftenposten, but what the industry has been doing across Norway. So back in 2013, the willingness to pay for online news was at a low 7%. And because so many of Norway's newspapers, and the biggest ones as well, like us and BT in the western part of Norway, have locked their content, their best content behind paywall, we've seen that willingness to pay for online news has grown. And with that growth, we've seen that the distribution of income in Aftenposten has changed radically. As you can see, back in 2009, almost 60% of our revenue came from ad revenues. But right about now, almost 80% of our revenue comes from circulation and user subscriptions. So that's a tremendous change that's been spurred on by the change of strategy that we have. Now, our primary acquisition driver today is our content. So our paywall is the, where we get about 70% of our sales, web sales. And this is, this makes it really important for us to understand what types of content that converts and how long people stay on different types of content. And that basically means that the way we work today has evolved around that content. Now, the way we work is, we are several departments here. We have our editorial team, we have our consumer business team. I'm a part of the consumer business part of this organization, where I work with our teams in CRM and sales and marketing to sort of make all of that happen under the strategy that we want to follow to increase our subscribers. But our primary way of work revolves around how we work with the editorial team. So we have sort of 3 levels to our work with our data and analysis team and the editorial team and ourselves. So what content is converting right now? What type of articles are people both reading and converting on? And what changes can we make to this content to make it convert even better? So what can we change the wording on the front? Can we change the pictures and that kind of stuff? And also what's going to be published in the next couple of weeks that we can tweak on and figure out how to publish in terms of getting the most conversions out of it. An example of that could be back in the day, we used to publish series of articles, and we would always publish them like on every Monday. The next 3 weeks, you're going to get an article in this series. So we stopped doing that and published all our articles at once in the entire series, so that people who are really interested in that article and that content right now, they're able to binge the content right now. But we still sort of published and fronted the content every Monday, 3 following weeks, so that we both got people who are interested in the content right now and wanting to sort of binge it all at once, and the people who just really want to follow and just discover the content on our front every week. And then there's the medium-term planning, where we look at how we're going to work the next couple of months. So we have meetings every 3 months where we look at the different teams in the editorial staff and see what their publishing plans are and what kind of articles they're working on and stories that are happening in the next couple of months. And we generally discuss, how we can move those around and how we can, if there's a huge article, maybe we can split it up into a series. If there's a podcast attached to it and that kind of stuff, we try to make a plan across our divisions to make sure that we have sort of the optimal way of publishing it for sales and engagement. And that work also goes into specific articles or stories that are that we are breaking, so that we have the sort of option of breaking the story, and we're not going to be pushed by anyone else because the story is ours. And those types of articles we generally have really good discussions on moving around and having coincide with campaigns, for instance. And that kind of work we basically do all the time just to move around and ensure that we have a steady set of conversions all the time. Now, the strategic collaboration, which is how we work in planning for the next 6 months, the next year, or the next year after that, and that goes into more sort of what kind of areas are we covering that we are not covering right now that might be profitable. Do we see what kind of content right now that can give us kind of a hint of other areas that we should, or areas that we should cover more closely? And what's the next type of content that we could put behind paywall? Because we are, we're looking at a model right now where we 30% of our content is premium and the rest is metered. So what is the next piece of content that we can make that percentage go up to 35% perhaps? So in order to be able to do the kind of things that we have to do to optimize our daily sales, it's important to have the right tools to make, both give us the kind of insight we need to make the right decisions, but also optimization in order to, get resources to look at the things that they should do and not just do a lot of manual labor. So I have a couple of tools that we use to make our day-to-day work really optimized. So one thing is Oracle, which is a recommendation engine. It's just a bot that looks at an algorithm that looks at our content and suggests to our editorial, to our desk, to our digital desk, which, if an article is open and it's getting a certain kind of visits, then we understand that content should be behind paywall, and they get a notification about that in Slack. Curate, which is our algorithms controlling our front page, it's split into two. So we have one front page for non-subscribers and one front page for subscribers. And so that content is driven by an editorially controlled algorithm. So a lot of editorial input goes into that algorithm, and it suggests what should be on top of the page, what should be all the way down to the bottom of the page, basically. So it controls nearly everything on our front page. And the last tool is Insight. I want to show to you. It is basically our real-time conversion tool. So I'll go more into detail on that. So this is what it looks like, and this is something that the entire organization looks at. And that's one of the key successes that, one of the key factors for our success the last couple of years. It's this tool here. So it's been developed in-house here in Aftenposten. The first thing is, we have this box here, which is the sales the last 30 minutes. So that's for really sort of fine-tuning if we see that an article is really, is reaching the top 3 of the last 30 minutes, then we know that we have a hit on our hands. This is also something we monitor in campaigns where this number is generally a lot higher. Same for these, the top 3 articles the last 30 minutes. We have top 5 articles today. This really is the one that determines what kind of articles we use for Facebook ads. Generally, the 2, 3 of the top 5, if we put them on Facebook, if they sell really well on our front, they will sell really well on Facebook as well. And we have total sales today against a target that we have. We have a target of 150 subscriptions each day. And we also have a couple of details on where the sales are coming from. So this particular article has 6 unknowns, 3 sales from the front page, 3 sales from Facebook sponsored articles, and 2 from our organic Facebook page. And the last important metric is the percentage of paid content metric. Right now, you see that it's on 34%. That just means that on our front page right now, about 34% of the content on the top of the page is paid content. Now that's a really important factor. I'll get back to you in a bit on why. Another tool that we have is this tool. It's our engagement tool, but it's really something that we use to look at how well we're doing on a weekly level. Now this is the engagement for all our subscribers on Aftenposten. We measure volume, how many articles you have read the last 4 weeks, and we measure frequency, and we measure how many articles have you sort of finished the last 4 weeks. So for each of our departments, for instance, this is for our magazine, it's a different one, right? So we have metrics for popular articles, percentage of how many of our page views were from subscribers, how many articles were finished, and how many sales we got per day. So this is how each and every department in the editorial team can look at the metrics that are important for them. So for the magazine, it's these 4 metrics. And for our commentary department, it's these 4 metrics. So they have successful articles, which is one metric they use, page views, percentage completion, and sales. So each and every department have their own dashboard where they can look at what's important for them, and they've themselves have been a part of the work in creating these dashboards. Now for the medium-term planning, our tools are basically Google Sheets. We're just sitting down, looking at what's happening in the next couple of months, and then we try to move around things to make sure that we have a consistent stream of really, high-profile, good articles and stories that we think are going to work really well. So we make sure that this horizontally from each department, we make sure that we have things that we know are going to work. We have some of these that are, impossible to move around. Those are the ones that are in yellow, and we have stuff that we can move around as we please, just to make sure that we can have a consistent conversion optimization. Now, when it comes to the strategic collaboration, it's very data-driven and research-driven. So we have 3 areas that I want to show you. The first one is how we, develop existing content areas. And to do that, we need to look at how our content works today. We have this dashboard, which shows us each and every section and type of content broken down on how good the renewal is on that content, how high a percentage of new subscribers we get on that content, and how many early cancellations we get. Now, the reason we look at early cancellations is that it's a really good indicator on whether or not we get a lot of renewal on it. So, excuse me. So, for instance, we can look at news analysis on this one on the renewal side and see that it has an extreme high percentage of renewal. So a lot of the sales we get from that, they really stay a long time. But we don't get a lot of new subscribers from that. So it's all the way on the bottom on the percentage of new subscribers. Only 30% of subscribers are new. However, almost no one cancels early. So then we can learn a little bit about what types of areas are really good for renewal, what type of areas are really good for generating new subscribers. And then we can develop them and put the right KPI on each of the pieces of content. Another thing we do is developing how we approach our paywall. So for instance, here we see this is a really good indicator on how sort of not irrelevant, but how much less the meter has become. So the blue columns here are sales per premium paywall, and the red one is sales per meter. As you see, the sales from Ether are quite low, and the sales per premium is, an order of magnitude higher. So we learn here about how many sales we get per published article, for instance. So we see that our career content is generating a lot of sales per article, and so does our news analysis and our magazine content. And then we can also see on the right-hand side, we can develop models that show us how, what's the percentage of sales on the y-axis, and what's the percentage of page views on the x-axis, and we can understand, how does this content, how is this content presented to our readers. Now, the content areas, developing new content areas is a rather new thing for us. And it's something that we've been working on for the better part of last year, and we've been doing that in close cooperation with the editorial team. So one of the things that we've been looking at is just comparing our subscriber base with the people who look like our subscriber base. So we, for instance, here you can see that 26% of our subscribers have children, but only 5% of people with children have an Aftenposten subscription. So, why isn't that number higher? So we have different areas of the population where that percentage is higher, but what can we do to sort of attract some of these audiences to us? So what we did was that we had a look at the potential, and we can see that there's potentially 700,000 people who might be willing to pay, a percentage of that, those people might be willing to pay for an Aftenposten subscription if we have the right content. Now, we have done this before, and never mind the blue X there. First, I'm going to show you what we did when we had our career. We had a content area that we tried to focus on 2 years ago, and that was career. So that's the orange X there. This is a model that Thomas Backdahl, a Danish media analyst, has created, where he says that where the circle of concern, interest, and usefulness intersect is where you'll get the highest percentage of people willing to pay for online content. So for career content, that is more inside of the sort of circle of concern, where there's things that have an impact on your life, and it's important to you, and it's intersecting by the circle of usefulness, but it's not as much on the circles of interest. This is not something that a lot of people are interested in. However, the blue X is where we determined that parenting might be. So it's both in the circle of concern, something that people who have children are concerned about. It's something they worry about and want to understand more. But it's also the circle of interest. People have a really high interest in becoming good parents and having children who are successful. And it's also quite useful. So that's something that we've worked a lot with the editorial team, and we've hired 2 reporters to try to explore this area of content. So fast forward to right about now. This is the model that we have today. As I said, about 30% of our content is behind paywall, and is paid content. It's stuff like exclusive stories, where we spend a lot of time on the content. It's news analysis, where we sort of try to explain to people what actually is happening here. We have short films that are curated by a producer in-house, our commentary, and the magazine content. So all that content we keep only for subscribers. On the other side, we have the metered content, which is still, primarily what we publish. And that is stories that are not exclusive, larger news stories where you can basically get the same content or information anywhere, and content sharing, where we share content with our sister newspapers, and very short articles that are either syndicated or minor happenings that are happening. So as of right now, people can read 6 articles a week, and we're experimenting here with reducing meter for people who are not logged in to just 4 articles a week. So one of the things that I spoke about earlier that I promised you I'd get back to is our percentage of the front that is premium articles or paid content. So that is something that we're, as you can see, the average here is about 35%. Now, this is a really important metric to us because we did an analysis of our entire last year, and we saw that, the line of intersection between sales from our front page and the amount, the percentage of articles on the front that were locked and premium content is completely reliant on each other. So, if we had 20% locked, 20% of our front page locked, we'd get about 25 sales per hour. And if we increase that to 30%, we get about 50. And if we increase it to 40%, we get about 50 to 75, right? So this has been a really important revelation to us that, even though you can say what you want about, just put it behind paywall and people will come, this is quite an indicator on that. So our next step is actually trying to get more data points on the 50% scale. So this year we're going to do experiments where we run 50% of our front page on 50% paid content, and just to learn what happens then. And another thing that's been really important to us throughout these years is that we have seen that reach in new target audiences and intent are really, really important factors for us. The reach, where we basically spend a lot of money on Facebook ads, where we show people content that works really well on our front page, as I mentioned, and just show them to a lot of people in Norway. So we have about a reach about 1.5 million Norwegians, and we exclude our own subscribers from those ads so that only new subscribers see it, and we get a steady stream of about 120 conversions every week from that. Those are really important for us. Also, we've seen that when we create tools and write articles that are really, really focused on specific topics and maybe help people solve a problem, we see that capturing that intent from Google is really, really important as well. In our previous election in Norway, we had a tool that allowed you to try to figure out what political party you were supposed to vote for, depending on your values. And our Google ads generated 1/3 of the sales of on our election tools, in total. So that was a really important factor for us as well. Now, I just wanted to give you a short example of how, all the 3 levels that I've talked about, the day-to-day, the 3-month planning, how that actually looks like when we do have a campaign. So this is the election campaign we ran last year. So all the content that you see here was produced together with the editorial stuff. So we had both the, the graphic content was the same as the graphics that we used in the election. So people would look at it and recognize it on both our front page and the tools that we created, but also in our paper and actual physical paper. And we also moved around on, when we published our tools, just to maximize our conversions. And we also did the manipulation of our meter in front of the election, so that a lot of people could see the meter notification after the election. And we also had a much higher rate of premium stories on the front page the day after the election, when we knew we have a lot of traffic. We also send out a lot of email offers to our previous subscribers so that they get an offer to renew their subscription. And then we basically not only kept our campaign period, we kept it for about a month, but we not only focused on election content. We also put a lot of content that we knew were evergreens that converted really well in the past, but also content that news stories that were good for conversions. And campaigns are really effective growth drivers for us. During campaigns, we see conversion rates increase, but with sometimes doubling conversion rates and sometimes even tripling them. And during those times, we try to basically push a lot of content into our campaigns because we know that having them in those campaigns will just generate a lot more sales. So all of these stories that you see in front of you are actually stories that were not supposed to be in the campaign, but we actually moved them around a little bit so that we could have them done in the campaign. So for next year, I just wanted to give you a short overview of what we're looking for next year. I mean, we've hit what you might call we're peaking. So the curve that I showed you, it's actually slowing down this year. So we've reached a point where our own site and our own properties are not really effective ways of reaching new audiences. So we are, basically looking at different ways to expand our audience and target groups. But first of all, one of the things that we need to get better on is engagement and reducing our churn. So this is going to be two of the sort of key areas for us to work on that. One of the things is something that we've stolen from Wall Street Journal. They made this huge and beautiful model on how to use different types of signals to decrease likelihood of churning. So what I mean by that is right now we know that if you share our newspaper digitally with a friend or a family member, your likelihood of churning goes down dramatically. Also, if you use our e-paper, so the PDF version of our paper, your likelihood of churn goes down. So those are sort of two really key areas where we see that it has a direct correlation with churn likeliness. However, we know that, and we've seen from Wall Street Journal's model, which was really excellent, that there are other areas as well. So if you follow this commentator, does that have an explanation for churn likelihood? If you read a specific type of content, what type of effect does that? What type of effect does that have on your churn likelihood? So we're right now mapping out a lot of these things to figure out, what are the signals that are having an impact on your likelihood of churning. The other thing is that we are creating more high-value snackable content. So we're creating quizzes, and we have games that you can play, like crosswords and Sudoku. And we're also creating audio content that we aim to put back behind paywall. That is the kind of content that is low intent, but high. It's a micro moment with high intent. This is something we've stolen from Thomas Blackdahl as well, our favorite media analyst. So what he proposes is that you have these macro moments, you have micro moments, and you have low intent and high intent. So low intent micro moments is basically what you do when you're on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, YouTube, right? You have low intent, you have no interest in doing something, and you just want to look at some cats or dogs. That's like a micro moment with low intent, and you might not want to pay for that. So on the macro moment and high intent, that's basically sort of like Game of Thrones. It's something you sit down and you really want to watch. Low intent, the macro moment might be like reruns of Friends. You have like an hour to kill, and you want to just watch something brain dead. So on micro moment, high intent on the top right quadrant, that's an area that we really want to explore now. So it's when you have a minute or 15 minutes and you have sort of an intent of learning something, but you don't really know what. So the high intent, that sort of area is where we put our podcast Forklart, which is sort of it looks a bit like the daily. It sounds a bit like the daily, which is sort of something that you can do. You really want to do it, but you don't have a lot of time to do it. So we're going to experiment with that on the engagement side to create something that really creates a habit. So on acquisition side, we are going to work with creating podcast content that goes behind the paywall. So people have to pay to listen to podcast, exclusive podcast content. That's something we are looking really forward to experimenting with this year. Another thing that we're doing is basically going back a couple of decades and trying feet on the street sales. So this is something that we stopped doing 10 years ago because it was just too expensive. But now things have changed, and we've found that we can actually get a lot of new subscribers who haven't been with us before using this tactic. So that's going to be interesting to work with. Another thing we're doing is that we are partnering with brands that are not competing in the same sector that we are, just to try to get access to new audiences that we don't have today. And as I mentioned, we have hired reporters to actually explore new content areas. And the one the first one we're trying out is parenting, and see if we can make a dent in that market. So that's going to be really interesting. So that was basically what I had. Are there any or many questions?
Okay, Sidney, thanks a lot. A lot to digest there. Very good, very interesting. And we do have quite a few questions that we try to get to here. Let me take a look and get started. So the first one comes to, let's see, where is it? So this comes from Frank here in Germany. What do you do after a customer cancels a subscription in order to get him back? Do you have any short, good advice?
So thanks for the question, Frank. So do I have any advice for that? Well, what we do is we have something we call holdback, and we got win-back. So holdback is, immediately when a subscriber registers their cancellation on the website or by phone or whatever, we immediately try to make that, on the web, we try to make it harder, basically. So we have this whole rig where if you want to cancel, you get into this web dialog where you get to choose from, why you want to cancel, right? So if you write, I don't have a lot of time, I don't have enough time to do this, then we try to suggest that, okay, maybe you want to try our, if you have a paper subscription, we try to sell you a downgrade to the digital subscription. If you choose price, then we will say that we have this lower priced subscription if you want to try that, and we have this secret lower priced subscription that you can get if you want that. We also have a couple of different areas where you can say, I'm going on a holiday, so I want to just cancel my subscription for now, and we give you the option of just pausing your subscription. So that's one of the ways we've sort of made it harder to quit and more tempting to stay, which is the tagline for that particular piece of work. Now that's worked quite well, but it's not really as effective as we hoped. So we're still working on that.
Okay. We had two questions about this. What was exactly meant by early cancellations? I think it was cancellations during a trial period. I think it was like that page where you had those three. But what is meant by that with early cancellations?
So early cancellations is if you cancel your subscription within 10 days of starting it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that's been a good analog for determining how many people cancel their subscription.
Okay. Wow, we have a lot of questions. Let's see. How do you exclude subscribers from your Facebook ads? It's forbidden to upload emails to a Facebook custom audience.
Yeah, so we have a in our consent system. Basically, we have this. You can, you select a lot of things when you go in there. But one of the things that you can select is that I want you to limit irrelevant offers to me. So all of our subscribers who have selected that consent to us, those are the people we exclude. So if you don't have that consent, then we are not able to use your data to exclude. So, but we have about a good amount of our subscribers who have actually consented to that.
Okay. We have a couple of pricing questions. One, what is your price point, and how important is price to drive conversions?
So our price point is about 25 euros for our digital subscription, so it's quite expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So how important is price for sales? So extremely important. So we use a lot of different tactics to make sure that we get a lot of conversion. So the one thing is that we have the standard 1 month for 1 kroner, which is about 10 cents. So that is our primary converter. Now we've experimented with different campaign prices. For instance, $1 or €1 for a month, or 100 kroner, about $10 for the rest of the year, and that's a campaign we run about in September. So we try and drive different kinds of pricing tests. So we always do A/B testing to make sure that we have the one that's working best. But yeah, pricing is extremely important.
Okay, this is from Alicia. She asked, she's based in New York, and she's asked, do you see different engagement between those audiences who are paying for premium content versus those converting off of the meter, and how do you reconcile that difference?
Yeah, so those two groups are becoming more and more different as the years go by. As I mentioned, our meter sales are dropping quite rapidly because our premium sales are increasing. So people who convert on meter are more loyal, so they stay longer. They have a longer subscription period than people who subscribe who convert on paid content. So we don't really do different tactics outside of sometimes in campaigns we have different pricing on meter and on paid content. But Washington Post has this distinction where they call it voluntary sales. So if you because you can hit the meter on our site before you run out of articles, right? So our meter accounts for both of those things, and the voluntary sales are more valuable. So they stay longer and they have they're more valuable to us. But yeah, I mean, we sort of wish that more people could convert like that, and in all our voluntary sales channels. But the biggest volume is on the paid content. People seeing one piece of content that they really want to read and hitting the paywall on that and converting on a low price and just trying to work on increasing the amount of people who pay on the first renewal.
Okay, in that same light, from Debbie, and we have time for about 2 more questions here. Since premium is converting so much better than a meter, why do you still use a meter?
Well, we still have an ads business, so we have a lot of content that we basically need to show some ads on, and so that's one of the considerations into having the meter, to still having the meter. But we also have this idea that Meter is an excellent way of sampling our content, right? So if you can get to know us a little bit better by sampling the content that we have on Meter. Now, this is a discussion that we're having a lot these days, because what we've effectively done over the years is take our best content and the way, the content with the most of our personality and hidden it behind a paywall. So you're not actually getting to sample the real us. You're sampling sort of a different type of content than what you would get if you become a subscriber. So it's definitely something that we're discussing a lot. But we're actually looking into models for expanding our Meter to also include paid content, where you get, some kind of model where you get 3 Meter articles and 1 paid content article a month or something like that. We haven't really figured that one out yet.
Okay, 1 minute. Where is it? That we had 2 people that asked the question. When you were asked the question, I think about basically churn or getting subscribers back. They wanted to know, could you tell more about the win back? They said that you talked a little bit about what the holdback. Not sure what that means, but could you say more about winning back subscribers?
Right. Sure. So the holdback is all about getting the people who have cancelled, but their subscription runs out in about a month, right? So when they're still with us, we're trying to hold them back. So the win back is after they've left, and we have a couple of different tactics there. So one of them is basically sending them an email and notifying them when we have a campaign and trying to get them to sign up for either a longer trial period, or depending on what kind of subscriber they were. So if they had a subscription for 6 months and they paid the full price for 5 of those months, then we're going to try to make give you a rebate for maybe a year. But if you were a trialist who just had a trial and for a month and you paid 1 krona for that, we want to try to get you over on a 3-month trial. So that's the kind of things we do on the win back. And after a year, we lose the ability to contact people due to GDPR. So just before the year is over, we send people an email where they can have a free month of subscription to increase the length of our consent, or the ability to contact our clients. Yeah. So we do a different couple of things there. I'm going to be honest and say that not a lot of them are super effective. We still haven't cracked the code on how to make really efficient holdback or win-back strategies.
Okay. Okay. One last question, because I know Sidney has to leave pretty soon. So how involved are the journalists in the subscription acquisition strategy?
Very much. So a lot of the journalists contact me and come with suggestions on what articles we should use Facebook to promote. And the insight dashboard that I showed you, where you could see the sales of articles, you can go into specific articles and see how it converts, and people are really engaged with that tool. So they are very interested. So some of them will suggest to me different types of fronting, so we can test out different types of how to desk our content to make it convert more. So they're super engaged in that.
Okay, Sidney, thank you so much. There are tons of questions here, so I will try to get to as many of these as possible, and just want everybody to know that we will do a summary of this webinar that we will email to each attendee and each registrant. As well, this webinar is recorded, and we will put this on our YouTube channel, and you will get that link as well within the next 2 days. So, Sidney, thank you again very much for a very interesting presentation. And thanks to everybody for all the engagement and great questions. We'll try to get to those after the webinar. And stay tuned for upcoming webinars, and have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.